IEM industry has spent years convincing you that more drivers equals better sound. At $8.99, Meze Audio just built one driver that makes that entire argument look embarrassing. Most IEMs at this price point stack driver after driver, balanced armatures, dynamics, planar elements, all trying to cover for each other's weaknesses. The result is something that's technically impressive on paper and weirdly artificial in your ears. If you keep buying into that formula without questioning it, you'll keep spending flagship money on IEMs that sound like engineered compromises instead of real music. Somewhere along the way, the IEM industry decided that complexity was the same thing as quality. Driver counts climbed. You've got 4, 8, 12 plus configurations that require dedicated crossover networks just to keep the handoffs from falling apart. And that spec sheet became a mile long. As buyers, we learned to equate more with better because that's what the marketing trained us to expect. A single dynamic driver started to look modest by comparison, understated, maybe even behind the times. That framing is wrong, and the ASTRU is a direct argument against it. Single dynamic drivers built without compromise produce a kind of coherence and musicality that multi-driver designs spend enormous engineering efforts trying to achieve. Sometimes simpler is better. No crossovers, no complicated networks. Just one driver handling the full frequency range with nothing to hide. The format never lost its value, it just stopped being easy to sell. The diaphragm Meze built for the ASTRU is labor-intensive in its own regard. The outer dome receives over 80 ultra-thin layers of gold through a 48-hour physical vacuum DC magnetron sputtering process. What does that mean? That means that each layer dampens the micro vibrations that would otherwise smear transient detail at those high frequencies. And under that gold, you've got a titanium layer bonded to a peak base that balances stiffness, speed, and compliance. Behind the driver, a precision magnetic architecture keeps dynamic linearity consistent through even those complex, dense passages. I paired the ASTRU with the Estelle & Kern PD20 DAP for my listening sessions, and I spent most of the time bouncing between Lily Allen's new album West End Girl and some of my favorite tracks at the moment. As the weather starts to warm up around here and my winter blues slowly fade away, my reggae playlist has been getting the attention that it desperately deserves. Jamming by Bob Marley and the Wailers was one of the first things that I reached for. Keyboard, organ, and percussion instruments all played together in harmony, delivering me an overall presentation that was full-bodied, energetic, and completely alive. This is the kind of sound that just makes you forget that you're evaluating anything at all. And that's coming from a single dynamic driver. And the grit of Somber's pop track 12 to 12 also came through with the same conviction. The electric guitar and bass both hit with immediacy, and his vocals were rich and full of life. During the moments in the chorus where he just gives it his everything, the ASTRU delivered that intensity smoothly and with purpose. There was no harshness, no strain, just the emotion leading the way. And the low end also deserves its own moment. As a dynamic driver IEM, the expectations that I had were pretty high, and the ASTRU did not disappoint in the slightest. It's impactful and tight. It was visceral enough to deliver that oomph that most of us bass lovers are always looking for without letting the low end become the entire personality of the IEM. Listening to some of the latest hip hop tracks, I couldn't help but bob my head and mouth the words as I was listening to the song. You know, that's the kind of bass response that the ASTRU has. It's tasteful when the music calls for it to be, it's demanding when it needs to be, big and bold, and it never once steps on the fine details that are sitting directly above it. Now back to Lily Allen's album West End Girl, because this is what really filled in the rest of the picture for me. The track Madeline features an aggressive flamenco guitar, raw spoken vocals, and many layered elements to the song. It's one that I've heard close to 100 times across various systems. With the ASTRU, each guitar strum was physically present and immediate. Allen's vocals sat centered and intimate, every inflection of her British accent articulated in a way that I just hadn't heard before. The elements of the song all lived separately without any one of them pulling focus in a certain direction. That's what a single dynamic driver with nothing to hide and no seam in the sound can achieve. Fact: universal IEMs don't fit everyone. And that's just the reality. And it's also why custom IEMs exist. But customs ask a lot from you: ear impressions, lead times, a significant price premium, and a permanent commitment to a single pair. For listeners who aren't ready to go down that route, fit becomes a game of compromise. You find something close enough, and then you move on. What nobody tells you, though, is that close enough isn't good enough. A poor seal softens the bass, it reduces the overall volume, and it just makes the sound feel weaker than it actually is. It undermines everything that the driver was built to do. I have small ear canals, and at this point, I can judge IEM fit on looks alone. The same way that my dad swore that he could tell if a fast food order was wrong just from the weight of the bag. Yeah, I know. Years of experience will build that kind of intuition. So when I opened the box the Astru came in, I had a strong feeling. The housing is compact, the geometry follows the natural curve of the ear canal, and nothing about the shape looks like it was designed for a generic mold. Using the included extra small ear tips, I slipped them in one by one. First IEM, sealed perfectly. Second IEM, same thing. No tip swapping was needed, no adjustments needed to be made. And as someone who has historically struggled with achieving the right fit and comfort with IEMs, this is a huge win for me. I got the right seal, and what that meant was that I was getting a low end that was tight, textured, and impactful. Meze Audio has always approached its IEM design with a specific philosophy, and the Astru is a clear expression of that. There's been this noticeable shift in the IEM market over the last few years. We've moved away from those eye-catching faceplates, oversized housings, and flashy branding, and towards something more understated. I'm talking minimalism, where the design serves the listening experience rather than the product page. The Astru doesn't have a logo you can see when you're wearing it. There's no colorful faceplate, no wacky geometry. What it has, though, is a titanium body with a satin finish that comes from a multi-stage electroplating process rather than just a coat of paint. The shell is built on the ergonomic foundation set with Meze Audio's Alba and Advar IEMs, and it's refined for long-term comfort. At 13.4 grams, less than half an ounce, there's no weight to fight it. The housing is compact without any odd angles that will impact your comfort level and your fit, and that electroplated nickel wax guard is built directly into the shell rather than added on top. It protects the driver without altering the profile. Meze chose a manufacturing process that takes up to 7 days per matched pair to complete. Talk about commitment to craftsmanship and quality. The Astru ships with 5 sizes of custom liquid silicone ear tips, ranging from extra small all the way up to extra large, so there's something for everyone. You get a hard shell carrying case, a soft leather envelope pouch, and an adapter dongle with a 3.5mm termination, just in case your device doesn't support the 4.4mm balance termination on the stock cable. And as for Dragon cable recommendations, we've got a couple of options for you. For those that are ready to boost that musicality and body even more, our Bronze Dragon IEM cable will do just that. It's got UPOCC stranded copper conductors that are going to warm, expand, and strengthen the bottom end of instruments like bass guitars and cellos, as well as rounding out deep vocals. Now for a more resolute, detailed reproduction, that's where our Silver Dragon IEM cable shines. Silver strands clarify instrument separation, they'll increase the soundstage, and they'll also find previously lost high and mid-frequency sounds. Our Dragon IEM cables will leave nothing between you and your music. So with all of that being said, who is the Astru for? Well, let's be clear about something. The Astru is not an analytical IEM. It's not built for the listener who wants to sit down and forensically dissect a recording, chasing those micro details with that critical ear. But if what you're after is something that makes you want to keep listening, I'm talking about something that pulls you in rather than holds you at a clinical distance, that Astru is built for you. This is an IEM for the musical listener, someone who wants to feel the energy of a track, not just hear it. Someone who needs the bass to hit with conviction without swallowing everything else in the mix. The Astru does everything exceptionally well. It doesn't sacrifice detail for energy, and it doesn't sacrifice energy for balance. It's full-bodied, visceral, immersive, and smooth. It manages all of that without any fatigue. And here's a little neat behind-the-scenes tidbit for you. Vlad Tolka, the Meze Audio veteran behind the Alba IEMs, brought a refined sense of balance, musicality, technical accuracy, and long-term comfort to this tuning. It's grounded in extensive measurements and real critical listening, and it shows. At $899, in a market that has normalized 4-digit pricing for anything calling itself flagship, the ASTRU deliberately stands out. 7 days of precision finishing per pair, a 48-hour diaphragm process, a cable with 161 silver-plated conductors per strand in the box. This is not a budget alternative to something more expensive. It's a direct argument that the best listening experiences don't come from complexity. They come from engineering done with a clear purpose and a clear listener in mind. So remember, driver count doesn't always define sound quality. What defines it is engineering, materials, and the philosophy behind the tuning. The ASTRU is Meze Audio's proof of that. The ASTRU is what happens when a brand puts everything into one driver and they refuse to cut any corners anywhere in the process. At $899, the ASTRU earns its flagship status. It delivers you an immersive, balanced, rich sound quality that never compromises on comfort or performance. And if you want to hear what Meze Audio does when they go over ear, our review of the Meze Strata headphones is up next. This is another classic from the brand that keeps proving why they belong in the same conversation as some of the best in the world. That video is linked right here. Check it out, and we'll catch you right here next time.